In case you miss it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Vince Ferrara, Mike Strange. Why don't we learn more about the Georgia Bulldogs? And we bring in someone that covers the Georgia Bulldogs for the 24/7 Sports Network, the Georgia team site, Dogs 24/7, and that is Gentry Estes. Joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Gentry, Vince and Mike here in Knoxville. How you doing, Gentry?
Good to be back with you guys.
Always great to have you on. I know you spent some time here in Knoxville covering Georgia right now. Just give me your thoughts on when these two teams play and the atmosphere from your vantage point, having been here many a time and seeing football and seeing these two teams play in Neyland Stadium.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a big time SEC game as always. I think, the proximity of the two schools. If you're a Georgia fan in the northern part of the state, up around Chattanooga in that area, I think this is probably the biggest rival for you.
Gentry, it's a game I'm certainly looking forward to. I know Georgia's already played in 3 really big games. Tennessee's only big games have been on the road, so for a Neyland Stadium scene, you've had Austin Peay, Western Kentucky, South Alabama, which I don't think any of those 3 got anybody's blood pumping. So I think it's going to be a good scene here. Tennessee fans are ready for a game that matters in Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, I can imagine, and and I think the new uniforms will get everybody going a little bit too. I was a little surprised they're breaking those out already. I kind of thought that might be for later in the year, maybe Vanderbilt, but props to them for going ahead and doing it.
Gentry Estes from Dogs 247 joining us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Gentry, I know you've addressed this many a time this week. It's a day-to-day thing, but let's hit on some of those injuries. What's the latest status on Todd Gurley?
He's not going to play Saturday.
Okay.
I'd be shocked if he did, and I've been saying that all. I mean, he's got a. I know the standard line you get from the team is day-to-day, but he has a high ankle sprain, and for a running back, it's not realistic to think he would be back in a week. I think if it was up to Todd Gurley, he would probably play. He's a tough kid, but I don't think they're going to let him play.
With Gentry, it's like from a Tennessee standpoint, knowing that Keith Marshall's there and knowing what he did last year against Tennessee, to me it's almost like, okay, so what? Todd Gurley's not going to play. Keith Marshall is really good, but what does it mean to Georgia to not have Todd Gurley play?
Well, and obviously, I mean, I think Gurley, some would say, is the best running back in the country, and I think he's a complete player. He brings a physical presence carrying the ball that Keith Marshall doesn't. As you said, Marshall is a very good, but Marshall was a 5-star prospect on his own. In fact, he was rated higher than Todd Gurley when they signed the two, and in his second season now, Marshall has not had the opportunity really to be the featured guy in the offense because that's been Gurley the whole time, and it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do because I think Marshall does get overshadowed a little bit on how good a player he is just because Georgia does have Gurley, and the people have the stigma that Gurley is the big bruiser of the two and Marshall's the track star of the two, and really in both cases Gurley's faster than you think he is and Marshall's bigger than you think he is. He's 215, 220 pounds. There was a touchdown against Clemson where he drug the nose tackle into the end zone about 3 or 4 yards. So I think Marshall's a little bit stronger than you think. He might not be the complete package the way Gurley. I don't know of another running back in college right now that is Todd Gurley, so it's unfair to really say that about Marshall. But I think he's a very good player and a guy that can carry the load for him. Yeah.
Gentry, what's the health status of freshman safety Trey Matthews and any other guys that might be a question mark or miss this game for Georgia?
Well, I don't think Matthews will play either. He's hamstring was an issue in the preseason for him, and he hurt it again on Tuesday. So unless something changes between now and then, I wouldn't expect he'd be able to go with a hamstring, and maybe a couple of other guys here and there, but Matthews and Gurley would be the big two.
Now, okay, with Matthews, he's starting as a true freshman, so that tells me that there were, lack of experience or whatever in the secondary. Now you take him out of there. How does that compromise the secondary, if at all?
I mean, it's tough for Georgia back there. It's been that way at safety most of the season. I would imagine, given they have a different alignment based on what package they're in, the base 3-4 defense versus the nickel. Tennessee's offense is such that I think they're probably going to be in the nickel most of that game. So that means that Josh Harvey-Clemens, who is the strong safety in base, will end up playing the slot DB role most of the game. So then you still need two safeties. And what will probably happen is with another true freshman in Quincy Mauger, who was the strong safety in nickel against LSU on Saturday, he probably moves back to free safety, which was Trey Matthews' position, and then a sophomore or a junior in Corey Moore. Not a real experienced junior, but a guy who is pretty sound in the system, has been around the program a while. He'll probably be the strong safety.
Visiting with Gentry Estes from Dogs 247. Gentry, a lot of people, a lot of national analysts have talked about Aaron Murray and how well he's playing. Talk about what the steps have been that you've seen and why he has taken it to another level. Obviously, the numbers are there, but what have you seen that he's improved on to play on this elite level right now?
I'm going to be honest, and I've been asked this question a lot this week. I don't think he's really taken it to another level. I mean, Murray's been very good for the last 2 years. People are now understanding that and recognizing it because he's done it in some bigger games. But Aaron Murray's been a very good player for a while now. He's still doing a lot of what he was doing. I mean, spreading the ball around, making sound decisions. It kills me because I do think, as you said, from a national perspective, that people had this opinion of Aaron Murray as this big game choker and a guy who did the guy won 22 games the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And, the South Carolina game and the LSU game and the Clemson game, the three tough ones Georgia's played already, I mean, these were coin flip kind of games. They could have gone both ways, and a lot of plays are made all over the field. So I think Murray got a little too much blame in the past and maybe a little too much credit right now. However, that said, I mean, he's obviously a key part of Georgia's offense. He's playing great right now, and he's played well before. But I think now, if there is a difference, maybe a little more complete. He doesn't have the few interceptions here and there, or maybe the bad decisions. But to be honest, as a guy who's seen it, it really hasn't looked a lot different to me.
Gentry, I'm curious, how do Georgia fans regard this rivalry with Tennessee now? Georgia's won 4 out of the last 5. Tennessee, obviously, not what it used to be. What kind of pulse is there about this rivalry this week down in Georgia?
Well, Mike, if you would have ever told me years ago that Georgia would be going to Neyland Stadium and be fielding questions all week about a letdown, I would have never believed that. And
right.
And you know what? The same thing happened last year when Tennessee came to Sanford Stadium. It was the same thing. How are you going to get up for this game? And it's pretty amazing to me that that's where this rivalry is at, because I think it wasn't that long ago that Georgia was really struggling to beat Tennessee, to the point that the entire student section filled out and they stormed the field in 2000 when they did finally beat them in Athens. And I think that it doesn't have that feel anymore. It has, after what Georgia experienced on Saturday with the emotions and how hard fought that game was against LSU. There's the perception out there that this is a trap game for Georgia, that they're going to have some trouble getting up for it. And I think it's only human nature to think that might happen, just because so much was put into that game Saturday. And if they do come out a little flat, it wouldn't really surprise me.
Gentry, what about some of the guys in that front seven, at least in the base? There's some really young guys that look like tremendous talents, highly recruited, I'm sure, as well. Talk about some of the keys there in that front seven for Georgia.
Well, one of the things that I think got overshadowed, certainly in the last game, just with the overall performance of Mettenberger and the coverage issues, is how well Georgia's did against the run in that game. LSU only got 77 yards and 2 yards to carry in that. And if and LSU's the kind of team that lined up a fullback and 2 tight ends and really tried to run it on them, and they weren't able to do it. It was pretty impressive. It was surprising, really, to see how well Georgia played in the front seven in that game. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that LSU's offense put Georgia in the base 3-4, where they could put 3 D linemen and 2 outside linebackers and stack 5 across the line on defense. Tennessee won't do that. And I think Georgia has been much better against the run in the 3-4 than they have the nickel. So I think there are some question marks in my mind of how well they can stop the run against. It's an offensive line like Tennessee has, and when they're only going to have 2 D linemen and 2 outside linebackers rather than 3, So I think that had a little bit to do with what happened in the last game.
Gentry, Georgia, the state of Georgia is obviously critical to Tennessee in recruiting. I believe I'm right, about 19 scholarship players from Georgia, 9 starters from Georgia. I'm wondering, do you get the sense from following recruiting like you have the last few years, how many of these guys, did Georgia really want? How many of these are recruiting battles Tennessee won against Georgia, or, did Georgia, with as many players as are in that state, get who they wanted and say, fine, you guys can go north to Tennessee?
I think it's a great question, because as you go down the roster, I think you can find some that were recruited by Georgia, but I wouldn't say the majority were. And I think that does several things. I think it probably makes those guys really eager to want to play Georgia.
Yeah.
And they're in Tennessee. There's a lot of guys on that team who are going to be up for this thing. But again, as you go down the list, the offensive lineman, Juwan James certainly. I remember Cordell Patterson was a guy Georgia really wanted. But again, it's the kind of thing where I just don't believe in the last few years Tennessee has recruited at the same level they did for a long time under Philip Fulmer back when they were coming into Georgia and getting guys like Jamal Lewis and some others.
Right.
But you can be proven wrong. And that's the thing about recruiting. So we'll see on Saturday. But I do think there are probably quite a few guys on Tennessee's team that are going to be up for this to kind of prove a point in this game.
For what it's worth, Butch Jones, with his microphone in practice yesterday, kept calling A.J. Johnson a wannabe Bulldog.
Well, he's one that I don't think was recruited, and I think I'm sure he's not the only one, but he's probably one of the main ones if Georgia looks at that Tennessee team and go, how in the world did we not recruit that guy?
Yeah.
Gentry, Butch is very, very active and loud on the microphone. A lot of sounds all the time in practice, babies crying, alarms and car alarms, things like that. Any Rocky Top playing on speakers at practice, anything like that by Mark Richt this week?
No. I have not noticed that, and that is different. I know 2 years ago they certainly did it. And last year, even when Tennessee was coming to Athens, I think they did. But, for all I know, they could go out there in the practice field today and play it for 2 hours. But to this point, no, I really haven't heard Rocky Top, which is different. They usually do that.